Well, welcome back to the next episode of TMT with Mike O'Reilly. My guest today is Grant Spellmeyer, the president and CEO of ACA Connects. Grant, it's a pleasure to have you with you, to talk through some really important issues that are facing the communications industry as we go forward. I wanted to get an idea, if you could, and start with what is ACA and what's its mission, and how do you fit in that role as president and CEO?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'm honored to be here today as one of your guests. ACA Connects, America's Communications Association, is a trade association that's been around Washington for 30 years. We started as small, mainly rural cable operators. Over the last 30 years, we've evolved as the industry's evolved, and we're really focused today on being a broadband telecommunications association, as opposed to just cable television focus. So we've got 500 plus members in all 50 states and many of the territories, and a long history of interacting with policymakers here in Washington, such as yourself in your previous roles. You and I have known each other going back to your time in the Senate long ago. I took over the association 2 years ago as president and CEO, succeeding Matt Polka, who was kind of a legend at the association. And my job is to help obviously run the association, but direct our policy and work with our members to continue to deliver really, I think, first-rate, thoughtful policy recommendations to Washington.
You came from the wireless industry, as I recall, and how did you find that jump? Was it difficult to go into cable and broadband issues on a different side on some of the issues?
Yeah, I think I've got a two-part answer to that. The first is, in some respects, it was easy because it's all communications policy, and it's all connecting rural Americans and representing companies that have a long and proud history in rural America. A bit of I had never done anything in the let's call it the entertainment space. So I had a little bit to learn in terms of kind of the big players in the industry and some of the history of the John Malone folks and all the various industry leaders, including some of the people that are on my board of directors. So it took a little while to get comfortable, but at this point it really seems like I've been working in the industry for quite a while.
So let's get into some policy issues, if you might mind. The FCC, an institution I know well, has been this administration has been pretty aggressive in adopting new burdens on broadband providers, on cable providers. What is your take overall on the theme of how they've approached your industry and the member companies you represent?
Yeah, it has certainly been a regulatory seesaw over the course of the last, let's call it, 3 administrations. I think on the whole, my members would tell you that they are profoundly disappointed where things have been trending since 2021. There's an awful lot of focus on micromanaging small business and members who really, my guys are out there and my gals are out there pushing real hard to deliver quality service. They're subject to tons of competition, be it competition from other fixed providers, wireless providers, fixed wireless providers, satellite providers. There's so much competition in the marketplace. We have a documented history. I've got stuff on file at the FCC that pretty clearly shows that my members have been out there deploying broadband. Our homes passed are up like 40% over the last 4 years, and that's in an environment where we had COVID shutting down expansion, and construction costs went through the roof. My members continue to deploy. They want to continue to deploy, but kind of back to the FCC and their regulatory framework. They've just gone way too far in the wrong direction. And we're pushing back. I don't like it. I don't like having to have to criticize what's happened at the FCC for the last 3 years, but I'm going to do it because I'm really frustrated.
So top of the mind is the issue, been 20 plus years, net neutrality.
Yes, it is.
As you read through and went through that process, that proceeding, did you feel that this commission had justified what it was seeking to do and that it matched up with how your experience when you talked to your member companies?
No, I don't. I remember back when I first got involved here, and I think I first heard the words net neutrality, and I had an advisor trying to explain to me what it was and why Olympia Snow from Maine was a big proponent of net neutrality. And I've gone this entire 20 years now, and I just don't. I love the idea of net neutrality, of no blocking and no throttling and treating people equally. My members want to be treated equally and fairly, but there's been almost zero documented instances of any provider anywhere ever stepping over the line, and there's nothing that has arisen in the record at the FCC, since 2016 that would document or justify anything other than a light touch regulatory framework.
Well, what would happen if one of your members were to cross that line and start to throttle or block based on the content or the information that was out there, or even discriminatory treatment? What would happen to that member?
Yeah, I am confident that member would face significant discipline in the marketplace. As I said, many of my members are facing, maybe unlike 20 years ago, today they face 2 or 3 viable internet service providers in every marketplace. And it wouldn't take long for folks to shift providers and create a death spiral, let's say, if somebody stepped over the line and went too far. And in fact, as I've considered this a little bit, I keep hearing stories from my members about the treatment they receive in their marketplace. We have had let's say a number of members who have complained to me about the treatment they get on the programming side, where a programmer, and I won't name names here, has come and said, I want you to carry this set of programming over here, but I also want you to carry this set of programming over here, and I'd like you to do this and this and this, or we're going to block you from getting to our core platform on the internet. I'm going to, by way of example, I will say Google.com. Or Netflix.com, and it wasn't Netflix and it's not Google, but as an example, if you don't agree to do the following 7 things for a 5-year period of time, we're going to make sure your customers, and not only your video customers, but all your broadband customers, can't get to Netflix.com. And that's the kind of stuff that my members are troubled by, and end users and customers should be troubled by. Those are the kind of things that the FCC and Congress need to be taking a good hard look at, how we prevent that kind of discrimination in the marketplace, as opposed to, my members are small. The largest providers I have serve a couple million customers around the country. But the vast majority of them are people serving 5,000 customers in one county, in one state. There's no underlying market power that gives them any sort of advantage to leverage anything. And as a trade association executive, trade association executives usually don't spend a lot of time talking about how small their members are and how powerless some of their members are, but many of them really are. And it's troubling, and we need to get a lot of policies righted, starting with Title II, moving to digital discrimination, and obviously there's lots of other things we can talk about.
Well, you mentioned the competitive effects in the marketplace. Subscribers could switch to other alternatives, but could the company survive the press firestorm that would be coming? I mean, that is something that, if they tried to do anything in net neutrality, that is something that would be instantaneously marketed, in the area itself, and then identified at the commission or on Congress to look see. It seems like something that's already that's ahead of the game, corrective by the market itself.
Yeah, as I was describing earlier, there are very few documented instances of anything that's ever gone wrong. I think the one that comes to my mind is Madison River from 20 years ago, and the only reason I remember Madison River is because they got hit so hard in the press regime over that. So no, I think it would cause a significant problem. And most of my folks, they go to the grocery store with their customers. They don't want to be bad actors, and they haven't been bad actors. In fact, they've been good actors. But regulatory compliance is a significant cost to small, family-owned companies. They don't have, my large members don't have squads of regulatory lawyers. They have a regulatory lawyer or two. All the small guys, they don't have any lawyers, any regulatory people. And unfortunately, some of the, I'll call them the bureaucrats in Washington, just don't understand that and don't grasp what that means.
On net neutrality, this commission has kind of shifted its reasoning, right? And actually its focus. It had been about blocking and throttling, and now it's about public safety and some other justifications that they've put out. Does that change your consideration of the issue? Or does that look like a mechanism for attempt to get regulatory approval through the court system?
I think it's a sleight of hand. That's a convenient and new set of ways to try to justify what's already clearly been refuted. It doesn't make me feel any better about it. As a matter of fact, it makes me feel a little worse. I mean, we're all committed to cybersecurity protections and all of those types of things. Obviously, there are lots of bad actors out there in cyberspace, but this is belts and suspenders. There's all kinds of old phrases about how people would try these types of arguments. I'm confident that the courts will pare that back, and that we can get this thing turned around starting next year.
You mentioned digital discrimination proceeding and your thoughts there. What is your take on an effort that Congress enacted as part of the infrastructure law to ensure that network builds or broadband builds are not discriminatory? Do any of your members, has that been an issue? Is cost the reason, for why they make economic builds, why they determine an area to serve, or are there other considerations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The decisions made by my members on deployment, I am confident, are driven by cost. That's what I hear about. That's what I hear about every day. If you back up to, as we talked at the start, many of my members started as cable providers, and they had a cable franchise, and they had an obligation to serve everywhere that the franchising authority told them to serve, and they've done that. Fast forward to the present day, to the extent people are operating outside of a cable television franchise and making decisions to deploy, maintain, upgrade network. It's done based on economics. It is costly to serve rural America. Costs vary from state to state and place to place and hill to holler. But as I talk with them, the risk of micromanaging and then second guessing those decisions, which I think the FCC, the way they've set up the digital discrimination rules, it really involves second guessing later about whether the provider decides to turn left or right down a lane in rural America, is not driven by a desire to discriminate against the people who live on the left side of town versus the right side of town. And we've really got to stop and remember that as we set up these regulatory structures. The idea, I think, I was working on the Hill, lobbying on the infrastructure bill when it passed. I don't think that's what the members of Congress that pulled that thing together truly intended, and it's an overreach that the courts in their review will have to take a closer look at.
Do you believe when you go and talk to the commissioners at the FCC or you talk to the staff, do they listen? Do they understand the challenges that in trying to build out a broadband network to either those that are unserved or you're trying to upgrade your network? Do they understand the economic side of the equation and the physical and challenging issues facing your companies?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent they do. I've met with all 5 FCC commissioners on multiple occasions in this role, and they certainly listen. I find all 5 of them to be thoughtful and considerate. Somewhere along the way, that gets lost when it comes time to, as you well understand the process, finalize the item and take the vote. And there is too much of a one-size-fits-all mentality that goes into, I think they look at a company the size of, let's pick AT&T just to grab the first name in the alphabet, versus a small provider in central Ohio who's serving in 1 or 2 counties. And so I think they listen. I think somewhere in there they understand, but when the policy cuts get made, they're not always made with an eye toward what will truly foster deployment by the little guys.
You mentioned how few regulatory compliance officials that your members have, as most of them have. How do they deal with DC? How do they handle burdens that are thrown at them from thousands of miles away that change how they perform and actually require a lot of, whether they be data collection, reporting, or specific changes in their behavior?
Yeah, I can tell you that they rely on their trade associations, certainly ACA connects, and I've got members who also have membership in other trade associations. I think we all try to do a good job of helping our members with member education. I will tell you that the last, I think, probably 6 years of ACA Connect staff time has been devoted in huge part to dealing, with the compliance with the C-band transition and with broadband labels and getting ready for digital discrimination compliance. It keeps, they come to us from the smallest members to the largest members. They rely on us to differing extents, depending upon how big their internal structures are. But that's really the first stop and sometimes the last stop for some of their members in terms of how they deal with this stuff.
Are your members engaged in the court proceedings involving net neutrality, digital discrimination, maybe data security, or the big ticket items? Are they part of the pursuing or others?
Are they on their own or through us? Because I think the answer is both. I have tried, and I think Matt Polka certainly set the standard that when we go to the FCC, we go with thoughts that are documentable and demonstratable. We don't just walk in and yell or whine or complain. We try to come with I'll go with fact-based filings, affidavits. We've done a number of affidavits in many proceedings where we actually go out, and my regulatory team, led by Brian Hurley, sits down, interviews people, tries to put actual affidavits about how difficult it is to deal with infrastructure deployment or C-band transition. And I'm very blessed to have a number of good members who are really willing to step up and literally sign their name under penalty of perjury and put stuff into the record in regulatory proceedings.
The changes in court review, you've probably been following major questions doctrine, what's happening with Chevron and the Supreme Court's decision in Loper Bright, and maybe in the data security provision, you have the Congressional Review Act having an influence. Does that change your hope of what might happen to the different proceedings being challenged in court?
It does. I should smile. I'm really excited to see some of the developments that have come down just frankly during the course of this year, I guess. I'm a lawyer by background. I studied administrative law. Chevron, the big case that Loper just knocked down, certainly was the established law of the land even when I went to law school. And so I've been 31 years now of listening to Chevron deference, and it's as you know, a huge decision that will be favorable toward empowering Congress and de-empowering agencies to fill in the blanks along the way. So I'm excited about that. There's been a number of developments in the major questions doctrine over the last few years, and I got a brilliant team of appellate lawyers that I'll leave the details to in terms of where we think how they're going to interplay and where they're going to go in the next couple of years. But it's certainly positive for re-empowering and then putting a workload on Congress to actually come up with some real meat and potatoes details on things. I think it will be helpful in our efforts to at ACA Connects to litigate over Title II, digital discrimination, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Low-income obligations and requirements coming out of places like the state of New York and others.
Well, let's switch agencies a little bit and talk about NTIA and the BEAD program, the investment going to be made over the next couple of years to bring broadband to those unserved Americans, $42.45 billion going out the door. Are your members interested in participating? We've been hearing different things along the way of who might be interested or who might be capable of providing service. Where do you rank your interest levels?
Yeah, my members are interested. When I took this job, NTIA was just ramping up the process of their agency, I know it's not a rule, but rulemaking that came out of there. So when I walked in the door here at ACA Connects, I had a lot of interest. I had members lining the tables, wanting to talk about the opportunities. I will tell you that over the course of the last couple of years, I've seen that interest, frankly, do nothing but retract, wane. I still have a number of members who are interested, who are participating at the state level, but there's a growing concern about some of the provisions that ended up being adopted, turned over to the states, and then the way the states have started to approach some of those is resulting in a situation where I fear participation's not going to come as quick as we would have liked, and it's not going to be as robust as we would have liked. You
mentioned some of the burdens that have been added by NTIA, and part of, I assume you mean the NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity. You also have this situation, you referenced it earlier, on the low-cost broadband option. required by statute, and what maybe comes of that. We're certainly hearing in DC at a number of congressional hearings that NTIA has been pressuring states to adopt a specific price for that offering. Does that deter your members from wanting to bid in certain states? Do the collective obligations that they're imposing, does that make them second guess whether they want to enter in? And not only can you add things that weren't in the statute or even referenced, but now that you're going to have economic burdens that are going to make it costly to offer service.
Yeah, I think absolutely the collective weight of 2 or 3 or 4 of these requirements layered on top of each other is really the nut of what is causing angst amongst my members. You've got some states have gone knee deep into some labor requirements that are going to make the program much more costly than it otherwise needs to be. You've got the low income requirements, in particular states that want to name a price. That's not what Congress intended, and price regulation in a free market environment is not good for participation. There's local siting challenges that are out there that are causing further problems. It's fine if a state wants to require you to address low-income issues, but the way to do it is not through setting a price. And I respect Alan Davidson and the work he's doing at NTIA, but I think he could have landed on a more balanced approach.
Are you surprised on the timing of BEAD? I mean, this is a law that's been in place for a number of years, and if you hear Alan Davidson testify, this is a 2025, 2026 when the dollars will go out the door, much less how long for the bids or the builds themselves. Is that surprising overall when you worked and lobbied on the infrastructure law as its formation?
Yeah, it absolutely, I would say it's shocking. If you had told me, back at the time the law passed, that we would be here in the summer of 2024 and not a single shovel had hit the ground on the BEAD program, I would have said, well, what the hell happened? Because I certainly expected there to be projects underway by now, and we're going to bleed well into 2025 before this stuff gets underway, and that assumes that nothing further disrupts it in terms of accuracy of maps, and each state has to go through a bidding process that's sometimes controlled in part by state law, and there's the whole procurement concept of government procurement of projects. I fear that this is going to continue to be a problem. Now, the good news is my members continue to deploy high-speed internet further and further into rural America, and so we're continuing to get the job done without the government money. And I guess that means that the money that's there when it eventually gets spent goes a little further. But I can't believe that we're on the cusp of a end of an administration in a presidential election and nothing's been delivered.
You mentioned broadband and how your members have transitioned from being cable providers or video the video offerings. Do your members still offer video, or is it a loss leader, or is it a few that still keep it? How do you approach video side of the equation?
The answer to that is I would say that the majority of my members still provide traditional linear cable television service. That number's dropping, as you can see it in the public numbers for the larger providers. And we're going through a similar sort of a transition. But is it a loss leader? Oh, hell yes, it's a loss leader. And we're not making it up on volume. It's never been. It has been a long time since video was profitable for my members. They continue to they continue to deliver the product. Challenges on the video programming side of things are massive, and we could do a whole other episode on those. I don't know. Did I miss one of your questions there? Does that cover it?
Well, I want to switch something. Just one last question. As you look out, and you've been talking to your members and they've been investing, do you see, it's not only a challenging market itself, all the different competitors, do you see consolidation at some point? Do you see where, the market shrinks on the number of providers and we have, larger providers buying up or smaller providers buying up, different offerings to try and grow and get competitive in scale?
Certainly, there's been consolidation in the cable industry over the last decade. In particular, I think there's been consolidation inside of ACA Connects. I have had members who have been either chosen to go out of business or have been purchased by somebody. Sometimes it's another ACA Connects member. Sometimes it's a larger provider. There's a lot of private equity investment that's been underway in the industry. We've seen some of it. I expect it will continue, but the vast majority of my members are really interested in continuing to try to be out there. And, there's a role for certainly a marketplace that isn't just served by 2 or 3 dominant nationwide providers. And that's the core of what my members are continuing to try to focus on. Some of them are family owned, the 2, 3, I think in one case I've got a 4th generation family involved in running a company, and they're not looking to break that chain.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for joining me on this episode and sharing your thoughts on this important topic. Thanks so much, Grant.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate
it.